Hail cheaters! Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. Game week 16 is 9/10 in the books. Kind of a wild weekend, wasn't it, Brandon?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Josh, by the way. Brandon, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, wild weekend. It was fantasy was a roller coaster, and then you just basically have the Premier League title chase, such as it is now at this point in the season. And it was a massive week where everybody dropped points, save Chelsea.
Yep.
And
thoroughly in second place now. It's crazy. For all the jokes the last couple of years, it's like it may have actually worked.
It's working.
Crazy.
It's working. Yeah. I mean, Maresca seems to have been the glue that's kind of like binding it, which I really had no idea if that was going to work. But it's interesting. You just came from watching the end of the Buffalo-Detroit NFL game in which the Lions, who are touted to get to the Super Bowl potentially,
hopefully,
and they took a loss on the chin that will maybe help them grow into the playoffs. You feel like
a good loss. Yeah, exactly.
This was a good win for Chelsea against Brentford. Granted, they were home, and Brentford aren't a good road team, but it was not an easy.
What about Man City? Do we consider that a good loss as well? Is that good?
No. I'm flipping the narrative. It's all about good wins in the Premier League.
Oh, I see.
And bad losses for City just have had bad losses for weeks now. Yeah. And then bad draws for Liverpool and Arsenal. Like Arsenal really did have a moment early Saturday. So it's sort of like trying to comprehend what's going on in the league table has made me even further confused about what I'm doing with my fantasy team.
Well, and they are relevant. I mean, like Man City's form is coinciding with the most significant dip of Haaland's form that he's had in the entire time he's been kind of available for fantasy, right? And so they're not like, I mean, it's actually a good thing, really. I mean, like it'd be kind of weird if fantasy was kind of wholly unrelated to what happened in the Premier League. Like it would start to feel like kind of fake or weird, or I don't know, like the fact that like when a team's fortunes fall, it also affects their fantasy assets. I mean, I will say there was a moment, I guess the first like 80 something minutes of today where I was like, oh my God, did I really just drop Gvardiol before a 15 pointer? And thankfully it ended up being kind of a neutral, it was because I brought in Timber and I was like, great, nice move. I was it wasn't like I had two transfers. And so maybe it was like a slight luxury move, but I just hated my defense going into this weekend. Right. And so I was like, well, let me just, I just want to get rid of Gvardiol. He's too expensive for one thing. It'd be one thing if I haven't had like Rico Lewis or somebody cheaper that I could sort of like handle like the dip in form. But at 6.1 million, Gvardiol was just eating up too much money in my squad. Right?
And in that match, he showed you the good and the bad of Gvardiol.
Exactly. And he can. I mean, like it was kind of a fluke play, and not that it matters. I mean, that's what good players do. They like. It's like to talk about football again, it's like a busted play, right? And then you turn it into a gain. And so he, he's able to score on basically like a deflected KDB cross, right? And
do you think KDB was doing a little Statue of Liberty sort of play there? No?
Yeah, I have to say I got to take issue with The Athletic, Brandon. They did this article. I can't remember who wrote it now. And it was your favorite writer, Rory Smith, Brandon.
Give me a break, this guy.
But it was like this. Talk about like what to do with aging stars. And he was talking about KDB and Salah like in the same breath. And I was like, well, one of them is like the example of what happens when you age. The other one, like, why are these guys being paired together? And it wasn't like he was drawing a contrast. It was like he was introducing them like they were both equally excellent. Whereas Mo Salah is like, suddenly he's like an amazing passer. I don't know where this version of Salah came from. Like that cross, or not the cross. Yeah, the cross for the
for I guess it was
goal. Yeah, I guess it was that the opening? Yeah, because Jota scored the second goal. It was beautiful, right? And absolutely like Trent Alexander-Arnold-esque, right?
Yeah, totally. And you've got Mo, who plays 90 every match, and his body shows no signs of breaking down. Where De Bruyne is really, he's like a classic car that you can only take out on the road, when the weather's perfect. Otherwise, everything is going to to go wrong.
He's like 33. I mean, there's nothing like it's just he is doing what virtually everybody does, right? Which is like you like every even like Ronaldo, right? I mean, it's like he's like
you and me.
I don't. You and I are the exceptions. Actually, we're more like Salah, thankfully.
Sure, that's true.
But
should we do a shirtless podcast?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, that has nothing to do with anything really. But yeah, it was a wild week in the Premier League. I mean, I think it really, with Liverpool dropping points, Arsenal's 0-0 draw was a really frustrating one. Again, it just feels like, I mean, they dominated that match too. I mean, I saw someone talk about how Deitch was like parking the bus, and I actually don't think he was. Like, I think first of all, when you go to a place like Arsenal, like, you're going to be up against it. You don't like no one goes there and like, it's just like, oh yeah, we're going to outscore Arsenal 4-3 in this one. Right. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a handful of managers, maybe like Bielsa would have tried that. Right. But in general, like, you're going to play more defensively. And they had a couple of really good chances, like in the first 10 minutes when Odegaard slipped, right. And Gabriel had to make that sliding challenge. And they had a couple of moments, I felt like, in the second half as well. And so I don't think it was a bus parking. I think that Arsenal were in control. I think Odegaard, really failed to make the most of some really big opportunities in the first half. I think ultimately you kind of have to hold him responsible, I think, for the 0-0. To the extent that any one person is responsible, right? But I feel like he had some pretty big, I don't know if they were misses exactly, or I just felt like he wasn't, he needed to be better yesterday for Arsenal to get 2 points or 3 points.
Right. Arsenal are in a point where it's like, they have had a couple of seasons where they've had players rise to the occasion or go beyond their skill level. Martinelli is the perfect example of that. And now they find themselves back in reality where they're like, okay, we need to sign to fix the defense, sign to bolster the midfield. Now this January or summer, they're going to have to buy a whole new left side of the pitch.
Yeah. And to me, it's like, I mean, it kind of like, it's okay. Like the Martinelli, rotation over there. To me, it's the lack of a forward, right? I mean, yet again, Havertz just didn't seem like he was quite the player they need up there, right? And I mean, especially on a day when Isak, right, who, like, there's a reason why the Isak to Arsenal rumors persist, right? Because you saw in that same day, like, what a really talented forward can do. And obviously Leicester are not as strong defensively as Everton are, but I have to think a better striker, that maybe there was an opportunity there for him.
I'll tell you what, I mean, Arsenal are not the only ones looking for new forwards. I was perusing the FPL transfer page looking for, guys below 8 million.
Yeah.
And it's tough. Like,
Duran,
I feel like,
is he like, okay, I have a question for you, actually. And this is, we have an actual running order here, but let's just wing it for a minute here, because there was a lot of questions that came out of this weekend, right? It was an interesting weekend. But, as amazing a manager as Emery is, and he must have his reasons for this, but I am really surprised that he has not found a way to just start a match with Duran and Watkins so far this season. I know Watkins had a little bit of an injury issue this particular week, but it just feels like Watkins is a dynamic enough player that he could play, up front or like to the left of Duran. And I don't know. Maybe they want the kind of like the two of them together, but I mean, they're not winning a lot of matches right now. They're drawing a lot of matches, right?
I feel like they maybe started one or two matches together earlier in the season. I don't
think they did.
I can't be sure about that, but
he talked about it, but I don't think it ever actually happened.
Villa's clearly just struggling, with as many matches as they have. So that's a huge problem. And that became glaringly obvious as you got off the Konsa band, there is no bandwagon there, but
no,
you got rid of your Konsa this week, and
the wheels broke down on that bandwagon.
I want to get rid of Konsa. I may be getting rid of Pedro Porro this week just because I want a little bit more money. And
I just played your wild card already. This is now it's starting to feel like stubbornness. You've got all these moves you want to make. You're about forwards, talking about defender moves.
Sure. I'm going. I have 2 free transfers this week, and I am going to play 2 frees and then wild card going into game week 18. That's the plan. So,
okay. All right.
I will play it then, and we can stop talking about it. So,
all right. Fair enough.
What's kind of interesting is there are narratives that are kind of like bubbling up for fantasy managers. I guess the Isak one is maybe the most appealing at the moment. The Manchester United one, which is that's one a classic like wild card team where I could get a couple of these guys. New manager, narrative feels good, but it hasn't really crystallized. Now, granted, they won the Manchester Derby, but they had to win it through some colossal mistakes that Manchester City kind of handed to them at the very end of the match.
Yeah.
So and not to take anything away from United there, but the point for fantasy managers is I still don't really understand what the answer is there apart from get Bruno. So Bruno's kind of the guy you can, I think, wait another game week to wildcard him in or get him. It's not urgent.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is that Bruno, in some ways, I think for a lot of us, the logical transfer would, for those of us who still have Mbeumo, would be Mbeumo to Bruno. But I don't know. I mean, you can't do it this week, right? I think Forest at home is a strong enough fixture for Mbeumo, given his kind of recent resurgence in form, right? 2 goals and an assist in the last match. I think it would be needlessly risky, or kind of almost like a waste of a transfer to take him out, right? Especially with
it's just like for like, which is weird to say.
Yeah, and he's cheaper, so
totally.
It's a nice. I mean, Man United have a probably slightly. I did put up I just pulled them from the Premier League website, but I've got the fixture difficulty rankings in front of me here. And I mean, the next little trio of matches for Man United are Bournemouth, Wolves, Newcastle, right? And I think that gets you through to, I guess you can include Liverpool. I suppose the festive fixtures really end in game week 20, right? I mean, that does go into January, but it's like that's when the kind of cluster. So we're in it now, right? We're not properly in it in the sense that you don't have kind of one game week bleed into the next the way we will basically starting next weekend, right? The 21st is when game week 17 kicks off, and then game week 18 kicks off on Boxing Day. And then that weekend we've got game week 19. And then the weekend after that, we've got game week 20. Right. And so it just boom, 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 boom. It's great. It's super fun. I have some actual Europeans visiting me, Brandon, for the holidays. So I'm going to be dragging them to, and one of them is a proper, well, my sister's boyfriend is a proper football fan, Brandon. I think he might actually prefer rugby, to be completely honest. And that's a conversation that you and I can I don't know how to feel about this, right? But
it could just be.
It's exactly. I'm fascinated by rugby, but anyway, so I'm looking forward to watching a ton of matches over the next couple of weeks.
Sure.
But on the fantasy front, I mean, I think the other player, maybe the one that's slightly more appealing, is Ahmad, right? Who picks up a goal and an assist in this match. He's still incredibly cheap, and you can keep Mbeumo if you get Ahmad, but Morgan Rogers turns into Ahmad quite easily. And so, if you had no other problems in your squad, I do think that Rogers to Ahmad is a pretty appealing transfer.
Rogers he feels a little toast at this point. Watching him this weekend, he had moments he could have won a penalty.
He should have won a penalty. It was crazy that the announcers couldn't let it go either, and it was of course it was bothering me because I had started him this week. Yeah. But it was I think they rightly said literally anywhere else on the pitch, and this is a pen, right? It's one of those penalties that doesn't get called because they just don't want to call a penalty, which is fair enough, I suppose. But I think grabbing the arg and if that were a midfield and you grab the player with the ball's arm and tugged them to the ground, that would be a penalty, right?
Yeah, he's an interesting player for Villa because, you talk about Duran and Watkins starting together. Is Rogers the one who drops to the bench? Rogers just plays this. He can be box to box sometimes. He's very good at linking the play, and I don't really see Watkins doing that. Duran seems kind of like he'd rather be farther up front as well. So Rogers plays a really important role for Aston Villa, which could be why he's just playing every match right now.
And I think he's a really really good player too.
No doubt.
Yeah. But it's just fantasy wise, I mean, it's the returns haven't really been there. They've I mean, it's not like he hasn't completely dried up, right? I mean, his goal was, he scored was it just last weekend that he scored, or maybe 2 weekends ago? But when you look at Ahmad, it's just an incredible, going back to game week 11, he now has 1, 2, 3, 4. He has six assists and 1 goal and he's still available. You can buy him in fantasy for 5.1 million. I think he might be rising tonight to 5.2 million. But Brandon, 5.2 million is exactly what Morgan Rogers costs, right? So even if you have zero money, and now maybe I realize,
depends on when you bought Rogers, right?
What's that?
Depends on when you bought Rodgers.
Sure, exactly. And like not everyone listening will have Rodgers either. I mean, I think you and I, like, we always tend to think like when you and I have, like, we share a player, we just assume that everybody else still has that player too. But I think Ahmad would be really appealing. But let's talk a little bit more about I guess let's hold off in the assistant manager trip because I don't want to derail our kind of game week recap conversation yet. Okay, so we'll move that to the end here because there's I think even though it has been discussed a lot, it was still launched fairly late last week, and I strongly suspect that some people listening to the pod have just not been following this at all, or possibly been waiting for this pod to discuss it a little bit, right? Because it's now been kind of chewed over for a couple of days. I think I have a better handle on what it is too, right? The new chip that has been added to fantasy beginning in, I think it's game week 24 when you can first use it. So some of the talking points from this week, I think that the biggest one really was, it was all about your non-premiums this week, right? Saka, Haaland, Palmer, and Salah all failed to score any more than 5 points, right? And that's actually, Salah was the only one with 5 points. The other three players blanked. There was a moment when I thought we were going to get 2 bonus points for Cole Palmer. Were you tracking this at all?
I was tracking it because I'm one of the chosen who have Nicholas Jackson up front. That was my main interest in the BPS during that match. Right. And he ends up with 2. Only because Chelsea conspired to concede late in the match, which was great for Nicholas Jackson owners. Yeah. I knew that like he was even still on 1. Really heading close to the end of that match.
It's kind of interesting when that happens because it's sort of like it's like go again, like play again. Like I'm sure there are a handful of Maverick managers out there who captained Isak or something like that. But the thing was they all seemed like pretty appealing, captainable fixtures, right? I mean, I think in the end, those of us who didn't have Salah dodged a bullet because I feel like, or didn't captain Salah, I should say, because even down a man, you just saw that Liverpool attack right now. And Fulham are a reasonably strong defensive team, right? Like it's certainly at home, maybe not as quite as strong a way, but they were fried by the end. Like to be 11 v10 and to be that exhausted down the stretch.
And it was wild. A makeshift center back pairing with Cuenca and Diop. Like neither of their 2 favored starting center backs. I anticipated a little bit more action for Liverpool in the attack. Yeah, obviously the red card didn't help. Yeah. It was just a great game, really fun game.
It was a really fun game. I think the most. It was an interesting weekend. I actually think in a lot of ways, a lot of the matches weren't that great. I think you had some great endings in some of these matches, right? The end of Forest Villa was wild. The end of Wolves Ipswich, the last second goal there. Man United, Man City would be another one. I thought Brighton Palace was a pretty poor match. And I sort of puzzling over why. I have one thought that maybe this is an actual fantasy thought here, which is I think I did not think about the João Pedro situation correctly when I brought him in. Because I brought him in right, it was like the game week when Danny Welbeck got injured, right? And so like the injury happens during that match, and then I bring him in afterwards. And I was sort of prioritizing the security of starts for João Pedro. And I wasn't sort of thinking big picture about how well Brighton were going to look kind of attacking wise without Danny Welbeck there, right? Like there's a reason that Welbeck has been starting all of these matches. And I think, I just think that like their attack looks a little less kind of connected. Maybe at the end, there was some moments in the second half of the match where it was a little bit stronger maybe, but in general, it's like, there's a reason why Welbeck, right, he's been playing super well, right? And I think that helps. That helps Matoma. Yeah, exactly, and it helps
right there in the name.
Right there in the name, and I think that was helping Pedro and it was helping Matoma as well. And so I think sometimes we don't always think about that, right? When we're sort of like, or it's kind of like next person up. It's like, oh, great, this player got injured. Oh, I want their replacement. right? And you're not always thinking about, well, like how important was the injured player to everything that, right? And so I actually think Pedro is extremely droppable at this point. Again, it's a little bit like that Morgan Rogers territory where it's like, it's not like a move that you absolutely have to make, but I do think that, I don't know. I was not super impressed with like how kind of connected the Brighton attack looked this weekend.
Brighton match was so frustrating to watch. The second half, they made some tweaks and they looked a lot better and really did take it to Palace. But every time Brighton got the ball up around the 18, it was just a series of one Brighton guy trying to lay it off cutely for another Brighton guy.
Yeah.
And the moves there's something to be said about sort of like more like a freestyle gameplay, but there was no clockwork to what they were doing, and I feel like that was to their detriment, clearly.
Well, yeah, and I had said this like 2 podcasts ago, but like it's just crazy watching these Crystal Palace matches where it's just 89 minutes of good defending, and then Dean Henderson. I always want to say Jordan Henderson. But Dean, 89 minutes of good defending, and then Dean Henderson does something dumb, right? And this is just you and I have lost what feels like 6 or 7 clean sheets this season. Just on like, is he like actually the worst keeper in the Premier League, just from like a technical point of view? Like, I cannot believe some of the mistakes that he makes. And it's like, he reminds me of like, remember Simone Mignolet, the like Sunderland Liverpool keeper, where he was like a player who could make incredible, like he could stop a lot of shots, right? He had an ability to stop a lot of shots, but he kind of couldn't do anything else, right? He couldn't control his box. He wasn't great with distribution. And I feel like that's like Dean Henderson. He's just like, have someone like, he can save a screamer from outside the box, right? But when it comes to just actually like, holding up like grabbing the ball out of the air on a corner kick or something like that, he just can't do it.
He stinks.
He stinks.
The more succinct way of putting it is he stinks. Him and Jose Sa like probably were roommates in college or something like that.
So anyway, all right. Well, that's one talking. But do you have anything to say about all the blanks? I mean, like, I don't know. It's just kind of a fluky weekend, right? I mean, they all had pretty good fixtures and they all blanked.
Yeah, it was so good. The times were so good, like a month ago, where it didn't matter which of these premium mids you captained because they would all return.
Yep.
And now life has just gotten complicated.
Yep.
And that's real actual life for fantasy managers, where you have to have a bit of good fortune. And I feel like captaincy, there wasn't a huge amount of good fortune, unfortunately.
Yeah. At least, hit us all equally, though. So it makes it a little easier to stomach. Yeah. So the other thing that came out of the Liverpool match, though, we talked about Saul a little bit, was Anthony Robinson, Jedi, the American international, though he was born in London, Brandon. But we now claim him.
We claim him.
American. Yep. Yeah. And he 2 assists, had a great match. And I also think like just the quality of his assists, I feel like they really stepped up the last couple of weeks. Even the chance a couple of weekends, maybe it was like 3 weeks ago, for Raul Jimenez, like one of the best crosses I've ever seen, where Jimenez like it was like almost impossible to miss. He somehow still did, right? But it was like the big takeaway from that was what an amazing cross that was from Robinson.
Yeah, just think of the Brentford match as well. And this is like the end of that Brentford match is what Jedi has been this season. It is the 95th minute, and he is still the one guy on the pitch who it's like they've just been playing for 1 minute. He's moving so fast, so electric. He's so positive. And when he said in the press repeatedly, like it's been a running gag at Fulham for years, like he can't cross the ball. He's just a terrible final ball, and he's been working on it. And the work is clearly paying off now. And unfortunately, I feel like there's no conceivable way that Fulham can't not sell him over the summer.
Yeah, I mean,
that good of a season.
They kind of have to because of his age as well, right? He's 27 right now, but it's just like the older you get, like the less like kind of sell on value you've got, right? And so I don't mean like they got to sell him because he's going to get too old for them, but just like if you want to maximize your return, right?
And for him, the player, he'll want to test himself. Like he's at the peak of his powers, and if he can get into Europe, maybe Fulham can get him there this season. You never know. Yeah. Forest would just like lose a match every once in a while. That would be really useful.
Yeah, it would just make so much sense for him to go to Liverpool, right? Like, I don't know, maybe I don't think it would happen in January, but like maybe in the summer, right? Like it's just like as we see Robinson just sort of gently, he's in like a gentle decline, right? Even putting the red card aside, it's like he's an amazing career, and it's just not quite there anymore.
Yeah, he's in the Han Solo territory of like he has his moments. Robertson does.
Yeah, exactly. How old is he? I wonder, Andy Robertson. You want to guess?
42. 1 year younger than James Milner.
Okay, he's 30. He turns 31 in March, so he's got 4 years on our boy Jedi. But I think that Robinson is there was a question that somebody asked about. Gabe Castellanos asked about cheap defenders to bring in this weekend. I mean, the easiest one I think is just him, right? Robinson. They have Southampton at home. It's a perfect fixture, honestly. And I just think that that would be kind of the easiest way to go. Now they do play Chelsea the week after that, but after that, it's a fantastic run for Fulham. Three home matches in 4, Southampton, Bournemouth, and Ipswich. Those being those 3 home matches is terrific, right? Like I think that, and honestly, if you were looking for a keeper, I think Leno would be another option as well. So.
Yeah, Travis in the YouTube chat says Raul or Emile Smith-Rowe still enablers. I mean, Emile Smith-Rowe got dropped from the 11 this weekend, so I think that it's not looking great for him. Like, I don't think he's like fully dropped forever, but and Jimenez, fine. Like, I think that he won't lose his spot to Muniz, even though he did score a very nice goal over the weekend. But I'm very confused by the forward options, and this is something I have to really like think about a lot more as I head into my wild card.
Yeah, well, let's keep walking through some of the talking points of this. Maybe it'll help provide some clarity. So, Arsenal kept another clean sheet. They continue to have a nice run of fixtures as well. I brought in Timber, so now I have the Timber Gabriel duo. I was very thankful that Gabriel started, although actually in the end. I guess it would have worked out. Well, he got 9 points, so it would have worked out about the same. But I guess I would have gotten Robinson off the bench if he if he hadn't played.
The Gabriel was the move I wanted to make coming into the weekend, and I just thought, with the uncertainty around his fitness, I opted not to and started Konsa instead. So I like that as a double up, and I generally don't love defensive double ups, but Arsenal, he's just like, are you going to rely on Everton?
No,
thank you. Even though maybe you can, I would much rather look at a top 14 for a double up.
Yeah, I think so too, and also like it on some level, it's almost like a defensive move now as well, because there are a lot of managers who were tripled up on Arsenal's defense. Even in some of our mini leagues, Brendan, I was feeling the sting a little bit, even with 2, right? So I think a lot of people who wildcarded late got the trio, right? The Raya. I think with the Ben White injury, it made sense to get because Timber was affordable, right? And so you could bring him in. So you have Timber. Would you consider Gabriel like going into game week 17 then?
I think I will be making the move for the next game week to get Gabriel in for Pedro Porro.
Right.
I mean, Spurs.
Porro. Credit to you. Like that was your like lucky moment of the week, I'd say.
Roll out of bed and get promoted at work. Sort of a clean sheet from Pedro Porro. So thanks. Off you go.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's right. Yeah, like when like a lucky moment happens, like because apparently he was getting an earful like after the Europa League match a couple of days ago. There was
whatever.
Thanks,
mate. Like get out of here with this. Like Porro's not like the greatest player in the world, but he works his butt off whenever he's on the pitch. And, okay.
He's better than me. No, am I the mate that you're talking about here? No, I don't.
No, I'm talking about Ange Postecoglou, the mate.
The mate.
The mate.
All right. So we talked about, so actually let's talk about Spurs for a second. I mean, they scored 5 goals in a 5-0 match. And I genuinely don't know kind of what to make of the entire squad now. I still don't really want Madison, even though he's affordable. You could bring him in. He makes some sense. Solanke is like just getting me enough that I kind of it's like I just don't have to think about it, right? It's like I don't love it, but I don't have to think about it. Son, it doesn't feel like that makes a lot of sense. If some were like 7.5 million or something, sure, right? But it's like I think you're going to get these like they had an amazing match and then he gets subbed off at halftime, right? There's just like it's really like it's just too risky with him, especially during the festive fixtures.
Right, minutes risks and also form risk with Son, where he's just like he's off and on this season.
Yeah, Brennan Johnson, Kulu, they're all just kind of rising and falling in form, and I think probably the best move is just to completely avoid the team. I mean, they have a couple of okay fixtures coming up. Liverpool honestly. It's not that great. Wolves in 19, I guess, would be the best one there. But otherwise, Liverpool's, at least, I honestly think kind of across the board, Liverpool's a bad fixture. And then Forest away, I think I was impressed again with them this weekend, right? Yep. Incredible fight back. Yep. And then Wolves at home. And it sounds like Wolves are going to be, bringing in they describe it. It's just, I love there's just like a never ending sea of like former like European managers. They're just like they all kind of look. I don't know.
It's a big world, Josh.
It is a big world. I know, but they all kind of come from the same pool of like La Liga and Serie A. Uh-huh. They're all like 49 years old and like they look like they've never smiled in their life, right? This is like it's the same profile, and they can always they come in and do a job, I suppose. I mean, I guess it's more interesting than just like the Big Sam types, right? Like this is a more like at least like you're like, well, I don't know what we're gonna get out of this guy, right?
They need a disciplinarian more than anything at Wolves. Just like the end of the last two matches erupting into violence is a joke. Like the fact that Lamina was allowed to allowed by his manager O'Neill. To even suit up for this match there was
a little bit of craziness across the board because you had the Cucurella red, the post match red, the rare you don't see that very often. Like the whistle has been blown and Cucurella gets the red.
Oh yeah, and apparently Liam Delap was involved in that fracas. I only found out like 2 hours ago when a yellow card just mysteriously popped up on the fantasy site
and the Wolves game. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. Well, at first I couldn't tell if it was Colwell that was going to get a red in the Chelsea. I know we're talking about two different matches right now, but like it was, that was pretty chaotic. And a manager just got a 3-match yellow card accumulation ban as well, which was that was wild. So. Actually,
these referees really have it all together, don't they?
There's a lot going on right now in the Premier, but it's entertaining. Like I feel like there's lots for. I mean, like I just pulled a handful of talking points, Brandon. Like there's plenty to talk about there. All right, so before we get into the assistant manager chip, I have this might be a new feature, Brandon, this week. It might help me to focus and not get off topic quite so much, and that is the non-fantasy question of the week, Brandon. And my question to you is, why didn't anyone else in the Premier League try to buy Ismail Assar when he was available this summer? Yeah. He's fantastic. He's such a great player. He was at Watford. Like it feels like so many like Champions League, European level clubs could have used someone like him as a 30-minute off the bench or starter, right?
I remember Sadio Mane big upping Sarr as he was young in the league with Watford and kind of shy, and Mane was really trying to get him to take the mantle of like a rising star. And I don't know. Well, I really don't know if there's some sort of off the pitch thing with him or not, but I agree. If you're Crystal Palace, it's just like nobody was stepping up for them, and now he's really helped pull them up by their bootstraps.
Yeah, and then 2 impressive goals, and I've always liked him too. And it's funny because I think about him in connection with Liverpool a little bit too, because it was Liverpool had that unbeaten season. You remember the year they won the Premier League title, and their first loss was away to Watford, and it was basically Sarr like made that loss happen. Like he was so good in that match. So just kind of interesting. So, all right, we've put it out for long enough, Brandon. We have a new chip. Let's not call the wild cards chips. Technically they count as chips. You can't play triple captain the same week that you can wild card, but like, I don't like to think of them that way. So this is now much like the triple captain, but much more complicated, I would say, Brandon. It's called the assistant manager chip.
This podcast is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or you're scaling your business, Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your offerings with a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. With Squarespace's collection of cutting-edge design tools, anyone can build a custom online presence that perfectly fits their design or their business. Start with Blueprint AI. That's Squarespace's AI-enhanced website builder to get a fully custom website with just a few steps. From there, get discovered fast with integrated Squarespace SEO tools. Every website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, so you show up more often on search engines and bring in more of your ideal customers. Head to squarespace.com/insight to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code INSIGHT. That's squarespace.com/insight to save 10% off your first purchase.
For 3 weeks, and I think you get to pick the week it starts, right? You can start at beginning of game week 24, but in theory, you could do it 36, 37, and 38, correct?
Yep, that's right.
So you get to pick a manager, which really just means you pick a club, right? You're picking a club to root for, and you will get points for wins, points for the number of goals they score, points for the number of goals they concede. If you, and I just want to get like completely in the weeds about it because you can pull all this stuff up from the fantasy website. But if there's a like level of upset, right? So if you pick, I don't know, like I wouldn't even go that extreme, right? But if you pick like Everton, right, to beat, like let's say they're playing Liverpool that weekend, or I don't know, like whatever, like you pick some like bottom 5 club.
That was a good example. I like that one.
Okay, yeah, Everton well, it's just funny because like they I just think about them like just drawing with Arsenal, but that actually would have been good, right? It's like you get points if it's like a bit of an upset, right? Like if it's an unexpected win or a draw, you get bonus points for that as well. And so it's interesting. Like to me, I felt like last week I got into like my like there's elements of the gameplay so I don't want to do that again this week, Brandon. We'll keep this positive. I don't love it because it doesn't really feel like fantasy to me. It feels more like a kind of not that I have a problem with gambling, but like a sort of like gambling kind of pick 'em contest. I don't like that if you pick a manager and then you want to change your manager, you have to burn a transfer to do it. So it's like you kind of have this non-fantasy thing, but then you need fantasy to do it. And then you need money from your bank to buy these managers. They're not giving you extra money for that as well. So you have to have money in the bank to do this. So it's just like, it feels very complicated to me. And that's
complicated. I agree.
Yeah. It's like they could have just given us like a game week where you got to have 2 captains, right? That would have been nice and simple. 2 captains 1 week. Great. Fine. Or like maybe it's like the key pass chip. And it's like 1 week, like, for every key pass that a player has, you get 2 points. I don't know. It's like we all load up on defensive midfielders for a week, right? I don't know. Like there are a number of things that could have like been a little easier from like a kind of scoring perspective. Because you also can't play your, like if you have a triple captain chip left or a wild card for that matter, you can't play these chips when you're activating your manager chip, but that also means you can't do it for the 3 weeks in a row, right? Like you can't do the manager chip for 1 week and then do it again 2 weeks later and 2 weeks after that. So that gets a little tricky because if there's like a rescheduled fixture, like a double game week, suddenly holding onto that triple captain chip could in theory have less value, right? Because you're sort of missing an opportunity to use it there. And so I don't mean to just go on here, but like this, but because again, like, let's make fantasy fun again, Brandon. Let's find, I think like as we get closer to the launch of this, and we still have like basically like a month and a half or so to think it through, or honestly, you have several months depending on when you want to use it. I also think the point scoring is a little extreme, where it feels pretty likely to me that like a lot of mini leagues are going to be decided on this chip alone. And I don't really love that, right? It's the sort of like infusion of a potential like 70 points that like one team could get. Like if you just pick, I don't know, like Bournemouth, and they just go on this amazing run, right? Where they just like beat a couple of teams that they shouldn't and keep a couple of clean sheets, you could net like 75 points, right? Like it's kind of a lot, right? It sort of feels like everything you've just done in fantasy doesn't matter as much as what, you know, like getting these chips, like this kind of non-FPL chip thing, right? And so I guess that would be my like issue with it.
I will always vote to just have no chips. We should have just gotten rid of them. For the purity sense of it. As you were talking, I started thinking a lot about Mario Kart, and I had this thought of, instead of chips that you play to help your team, couldn't there be chips that you would have that you could play like turtle shells in Mario Kart to hurt your opponents? Can I have a mini league chip where I
that'd be cool.
Like take one of my opponent's players off of the pitch or something like that?
I like that, a little turtle shell. Yeah, that would be kind of fun. Yeah,
but I agree with pretty much everything you said about the assistant manager chip. Like it is immediately to me grating and uninteresting just by how convoluted and complicated it is. And I'm sure there will from it generate lots of interesting strategy that will sort of like come on board for. The positive thing I feel about the assistant manager chip is like the thing that I always like to hit on is fantasy is a supplement to watching the Premier League, and sometimes fantasy gets in the way of you just being a fan and watching a Premier League match in more pure sense. And there's always this moment, like on our Patreon Discord, where a goal goes in, but it involves nobody that anybody owns in fantasy. So while a goal is this joyful thing, nobody in fantasy cares because it had no impact on our team.
Right.
So when you look at the assistant manager chip, you're looking for outcomes. So a goal could help your assistant manager chip regardless of who scores, which then just can make watching a game that much more fun. And I think that we're going to get a lot out of that, which is really cool.
I think that's true. It's just like, if it is a lot of fun, does that just replace FPL? Like, at some point, like,
sure,
because I guess the concern to me is it's not really fantasy, right? It's like it's a kind of like it's like the pick 5 thing that NBC used to do, where you'd pick like 5 games and you try to pick the score or whatever, right? Or your FAF, whatever the thing that you do, or your prediction league that you've done with listener Jeff and some other folks, and like, you know, which it would again, like, so I guess like. Again, I want to be like, I want to talk about the chip, and then as we get closer to it, we will be productive in terms of our kind of thoughts on it. But I guess like I do sort of hope that it's a one-off, like an interesting thing that you do once. If this becomes a thing that happens every year, it's like, I actually think it's honestly too complicated for like a lot of like children are playing fantasy now, right? And like slightly complicated. Like I'm trying to like I have like an 8-year-old, and I was considering bringing them into the fold for fantasy next fall. And I'm like, Alex, something like this, I'd be like, oh, you've got to use it these 3 weeks, and it's like it's so
immediately their eyes glaze over, and they're just like, Dad, this is not fun.
It's inelegant. That's what it is, Brennan. And that's my thoughts. But again, let's make the best of it. Let's try to have some fun with it. And honestly, I'm down some points in my mini league. So if I can fluke my way to a league title in one of my mini leagues by picking Leicester to go on a 3-match run, then great. That's awesome. So all right. So but I think holding 5 transfers will have a lot more value because of this, right? Because you have to use transfers to change your manager. If you had 2, 3, or more transfers available for you, that does reduce some of the annoyance, I think, about having to burn a transfer out and to change your change your manager.
Totally. Yeah. But we have Christmas off to not think about that.
Right. Yep.
which is good. So let's gear ourselves up for the new year.
Okay.
And, when the new year hits, that's when all the questions coming into the pod are, how do I make up ground in my mini league? And you've said it exactly right there, Josh. Like, now you don't really have to do anything except play your assistant managership correctly.
Yeah, that's true. You can actually kind of just like go into, you can coast as long as you get that right. So, and honestly, it will encourage some bold, you should take some risks, right? If
agreed.
You're 19 spots back in your mini league.
Maybe that's like what comes out of it too, is just like, it's like a free roll for a lot of people, and that could be fun. Yeah,
exactly. It's a Hail Mary. And so, there's some benefits in that, I suppose. All right, we ended on a positive note. That's perfect. So just quick score check time. We did talk a little bit, Brandon. I'm on 48 points. I have one player left to go. I've got Kirkez. Of course, I was kicking myself for not getting Lewis Hall, who was the other similarly priced asset that was available. I think for me, this happens in fantasy sometimes where I had a bad run with Hall to start the season. He was in my game week 1 team, and he kind of immediately lost his spot. And so even though he, seems to be kind of more solidly entrenched now and has been playing great, he's on corners, right? It's a lot of kind of advantages to having him in fantasy. It was like I couldn't quite get over that run, where I had him and it didn't work out earlier this season.
Yes. Yeah, totally. But he hauled for sure. Horrible joke there.
I couldn't even tell it was intentional the way I think if you're going to make a bet, you got to you got to mug a little more.
I felt bad making that joke because before we started recording, I already sort of like typed up preliminary show notes and I put that joke in there. And I was like, am I really going to the joke always feels worse after you've thought of it. Anyway.
It's funny because he honestly has been a stone cold lock going back to game week 4. It's just that I don't know what happened early on. He got pulled off early in game week 1 and then had 2 sub appearances in game week 2 and 3. And since then he's been fine. So maybe I just didn't really, I'm just guilty of not thinking it all the way through. I think he's another good buy. Another person, someone was asking, we had that discussion a little bit earlier about cheap assets to consider. And I do think that he's they play Ipswich in game week 17, right? And so there's kind of 2 paths to points with Hall, right? You can get a clean sheet, which I think is definitely possible. Although Ipswich, they have been losing a lot, but they do find a way to score. But I think that even then, even it ended up being like a 3-2 match, you might be able to just kind of get the equivalent of a clean sheet or better just through, assist points and bonus and things like that.
All right. So what's Kirkez's ceiling Monday night? Let's get into this prediction game ahead of time.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, it's, they're playing West Ham. West Ham are struggling at the moment, as we know. No Antonio. We hope that he is okay. You and I are both big Antonio fans, of course.
Always have been. Absolutely.
Going way back to the old, Simpsons celebration. So I think that, I'd take anything. Honestly, give me, what would I take? I say anything. I would take 5 points. You give me 5 points and I'd shake your hand and take it right now. I think that would be a pretty decent return. I don't know. What do you think? What's your Kirkez?
Well, the appeal of Kirkez is how attacking he is, and I think that it was the right time to buy on Kirkez with Bournemouth. Just he seems to be even more involved in the attack now, which is great. He's got a little run going here. So
and they have a decent.
Go on. What's the run coming up for Bournemouth?
It's it's like a lot of clubs. Their home, or like a lot of the players that we're sort of talking about buying, their home fixtures are the key here, right? Because you can bench, especially when they're cheaper defenders like this, you can just kind of bench them in most cases, right? But they have West Ham, Palace, and Everton at home in 3 of their next 5. Man United away and Fulham away in 17 and 19. But Bournemouth have been especially good at home this season. So I think, so I guess my plan is just I like him to start, a handful of the upcoming fixtures. And I think that he's a decent bench option if need be.
Great. Okay, so on the whole, like it looks like you're at 48 points plus whatever you get from Kirk.
Yeah.
Good. Let's rate it.
It's
good
like
game week, bad game week.
I'd say it's like a 5 out of, it's like, 5 or 6 out of 10. It's like a real like neutral. I think unless he gets like a red card tomorrow, I think I might be up just slightly, a couple points, like 10,000 spots, like not that much, but I'll take it. Yeah. And the Mbeumo goal and 3 bonus late was amazing, huge. Also knocked out the Chelsea clean sheet, so it was kind of a double whammy from that perspective. And then we talked about everybody else's blanks. I mean, the Rodgers thing, it was but it was the double Arsenal clean sheet. Losing the Henderson thing was like you and I both have Henderson, and it's just like we saw it coming. It was like he gets the time wasting yellow card, and then.
In like the 67th minute. Like,
way too early. And exactly. And then they kind of needlessly conceded a corner kick. And then I was like, oh, this is gone. Like, there's no way this clean sheet survives this corner. So so all in all, fine. Like, no complaints. What about you? How's your week been so far?
Well, I am on 48 points as well. However, I don't have anybody. I'm all out. So I'll put my team here up on the screen for the YouTube viewers. But 2 points from Henderson. I benched Anthony Robinson and started Konsa, Timber, and Porro across the back line. We talked about Timber and Porro, and Konsa, I had moved on to Christmas shopping with the wife at that point, and while I was holding a bunch of like sheets of wrapping paper with 2 hands, fumbling to get my phone and check the score, and like within the span of us buying this wrapping paper, 2 goals go in, and
it wasn't like in a tube. It was just like loose.
Well, you gotta get them off those little racks, right?
Oh,
and then when you pay at the cash
register,
register, they roll them up for you. So that was my situation.
I think that's like a fancy like paper source kind of wrapping paper.
I suppose, but it's really a test for people in that situation to I'm gritting through my teeth like, yes, Merry Christmas.
I know.
Konsa just lost. He went from 6 to 1 points.
Well, you got the double whammy because it looked like you got out of it, right? Because there was the Chris Wood goal that was disallowed.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
it was like, it's like you got a whatever, right? Like it's like totally. you got a last minute pardon, and then but then it was a weird match because I actually watched the match and like straight through, and it was not good. Like the first half was bad, and it was the kind of match where I was like, oh, I guess both clubs just really are fine with they're kind of fine with a 0-0 here, and then it was an amazing McGinn cross. Like it was like a snapshot. It's like in slowed down, you can kind of you can see it, but in real time, it was so fast. It was like the play where Duran scored. It was really beautiful, and then suddenly it was a game, and it was super exciting for the last 25 minutes. But so just one of those ones that kind of didn't get going until it was almost over.
So I had my down moments on Saturday. The late kickoff fixtures on Sunday really did save my bacon with Porro and then the 10-pointer from Mbeumo and Nicholas Jackson. When Nicholas Jackson missed the open goal, it was around the 70th.
And when they show the manager,
I kind of felt like this is about as low as I can go. And if I can go any lower than this, then we're gonna have to talk to somebody,
right? Because you were in the and there were some last cheater standing knockout league implications.
I think that was a lot of sound and fury there. I don't think there's
Porro probably got you out of it, but
somebody was getting me out of it one way or another. So to end on 48 points, I'm just 2 points currently below my safety score. It could have been a lot worse. So I'm grateful to be here. Now I went from 7 green arrows in a row to now 2 reds on the bounce. So it feels like suddenly the good run I think has allowed me to not play my wild card, and then suddenly it can happen really quickly that your team goes really stale. And I was getting bailed out by some strange players, like going back to an 11-pointer from Liam Delap, and finally, it's all coming home to roost, and now I do have to switch things up, and that's a good thing. So just need to make sure I don't screw that up. And because I think I'd like at around 310K, I think I am right now, live rank 312K. I would like to push on to the top 100K in the next like 2 months. I would say that's where I want to be. Sense. when the snow starts melting, I want to be talking about top 25K for sure.
Okay, I like that. Okay, because you said 2 months to 100, and I was like, you got to. I think with your wild card, I think there's a lot of, with some real thinking and planning. I think that sure. I think you can do it by. I think top 100K by January is very doable.
Yeah. It is. It gets harder the smaller your rank gets for sure. But let's be positive.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're quite a ways into this already, Brandon. I usually we do our little Patreon promo sooner in the pod, but let me just quickly say if you would like to support the podcast, it's kind of like our pledge month, Brandon. It's December. We've been getting a lot of patrons this month. Actually, I think we're at 6 or 7 new patrons, which getting this far into the year that doesn't always happen, right? You sort of. It's an early season game getting Patreon supporters. So we really appreciate anyone who supports the podcast midway through. And certainly if you're doing well and you feel like a little more FPL conversation would help you to maybe win your mini league. Maybe it pays for itself, Brandon. Maybe you're in a cash league and it pays for itself. But either way, it's just a fun community to be a part of. It's a nice, there's live chat going on for every single match, including lots of non-Premier League matches. So a quick thank you to Irish Born Investor, a new Patreon supporter that we got this week. So you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. You get an extra podcast each week. You get access to our Discord where you can chat with us. We do lots of giveaways. We'll do another second half kit giveaway this time, Brandon. We did one last year and it was a lot of fun. I think a lot of people got into it.
One rule, Josh, right? What's the rule?
The Premier League, non-Premier League kit giveaway contest. Last year we got this lovely Dulwich Hamlet kit, Brandon. And so we will buy a kit for the winner. And then we will also buy them for ourselves. So if you have a non-Premier League kit that you really want to see us wear, Brandon, then pick that one. I don't know, whatever it is. It just can't be the Premier League. We like to.
We'll buy the kit for you, and then we'll make you buy 2 kits, one for each of us. That's how it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. We really come out ahead in this. And in the end, no, we'll buy 3. We'll buy 3 kits for all parties.
Right, of course.
Brandon, and of course you can join the Always Cheating Super League as well. That's available at alwayscheating.com. So, Brandon, looking ahead to game week 17, it kicks off this Saturday, and it's truly the beginning of the festive fixture run. The Champions League is complete until late January, so it comes back a little earlier than we've had in the past. But a nice handful of days. I think there are some League Cup fixtures this week, though, aren't there? If I'm not mistaken, are there some?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, let me pull those up. So if we're looking ahead to Tuesday in the no League Cup matches there, but on Wednesday, Arsenal host Palace, Newcastle host Brentford, and Southampton host Liverpool. So lots of action there with teams that
League Cup quarterfinals, right?
It is the quarterfinal, exactly. Yep. And then Spurs host United on Thursday for the final quarterfinal leg there.
So, like the Champions League, that's a lot of Premier League players, a lot of players that people own. So you may want to be a little careful about your transfers just to be safe going into this weekend. But in game week 17, Brandon, we have what I like to call an FPL classic. We have fixtures on just Saturday and just Sunday. We don't have any Mondays. We don't have anything else. It's just a clean weekend of 10 matches. It always becomes a challenge around this time, Brandon, to try to work out just how much fantasy, I should just say actual Premier League, just how much screen time you can work in the midst of seeing your family. It helps if they're sports fans, right? But sometimes it can't be avoided. So it makes sense usually to try to pick one game that you really want to watch, right?
Yes, that's right.
And let's see. I'm looking. I shared the fixtures that you and I could both take a look at them, Brandon.
Pick the one match that you wouldn't mind explaining the offside rule to your dad 20 times while watching.
That's a good. Yeah, I suppose. It's pretty easy this weekend because I think it would be this Spurs Liverpool game on the 22nd, right?
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
That's the most fun. And I think that it's a real anything's on the table kind of match. I feel like you could absolutely see, Spurs have kind of, Spurs can beat or lose to anybody, as we've discussed many times. So I think that one could be a lot of fun. If I were to pick another match that wouldn't be kind of the obvious featured one,
Villa City is interesting to me, and
it's interesting. But I thought about that too. But City right now are so miserable. Like everyone seems so unhappy there, right? Yeah. That it's like it kind of is taking the fun out of watching them a little bit, right? It's like there's something about like contrasted with Liverpool right now under Slot, right, where there's a kind of like as much as I really loved Klopp, it's like there's just like a real like a renewed energy right now, right? It feels like it's like they've gotten kind of like a I don't know, just like a fresh.
And they should get rid of Pep. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but it is. But the vibes aren't great right now for them. So that would be my only issue. I suppose Brentford Forest could be a fun kind of.
Sure, agreed.
It could be like that has like 3-2 written all over it, I'd say.
I mean, come on. All these games seem in their own way. Ipswich home against anybody, kind of fascinating. Yeah. West Ham, Brighton, both teams that are kind of like stop-start, can only attack, not really defend. Palace will be buoyed after that win this weekend, hosting Arsenal. Interesting match for Arsenal. Yeah. I want to talk about captaincy with you, Josh, in a moment. I'm not sure what to make of that game.
Yeah.
Saturday, I feel like any one of these picks could turn out to be one of the best matches of the weekend.
Yeah, and even like going on to Sunday, there are 5 matches as well. I think that the pick there would probably be. Well, I guess Man United Bournemouth, just because I'm sort of curious what's happening with Man United right now, and I think that Bournemouth are kind of they'll give everybody a game, right? Yeah. Like it's like so I think that one could be fun. I think as far as the captaincy goes, to me, I think Salah is the clear captain pick. It's just almost impossible for me to imagine him not scoring in that Spurs game, right? Even away from home, it just like that. I just think it's gonna be a little bit like the Chelsea match a couple of weeks ago with Salah as Cole Palmer, right? And just
Fraser Forster has been getting a little too easy a ride so far, and he's gonna be taken to the cleaners in one of these matches, and it will. Yeah, I agree. Could be this one.
Yeah. As far as I mean, kind of other captaincy options. I suppose you'd have. Saka away to Palace. I wouldn't say I'm like super enthused about that though. And then Palmer. I mean, if Chelsea were hosting Everton, I'd feel better about it. But I don't know. I mean, you've had Mikalenko for quite a long time, and he's been like you've
Which I still had him.
Yeah. I mean, like, and they benefit from. From their home form, right? And so,
what's funny is I will have, when I wild card, I will have Mikalenko again, like, because he still somehow hasn't gone up in price. He's still 4.3 after just like absolutely demolishing all other defenders in the last 5. 6-6 -1, 11 and 7. It's just an incredible run for a 4.3 guy. So I agree. Just like get back to the captaincy. Yeah, like Everton, they're not going to necessarily make it easy for Palmer. And this has been Palmer's Achilles heel this season, is when the going gets tough, it's harder for him to really take the game by the scruff of the neck, it seems.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that I'll probably still end up vice captaining him. Maybe I'll put it on Saka. I don't know. I think that went through a little bit, but and then I think as far as like kind of fixtures to target with transfers, I do think that Fulham, Southampton, we talked about that already with Anthony Robinson. Having owned Jimenez for the last few weeks, I don't know that I would really recommend, even with like this really nice run of home fixtures ahead, I don't know that I'd really recommend him for a transfer. I just think that his ceiling is not super high, right? He's like a fine player to own for little windows of time. And I don't think he's like the worst transfer you could make this week, but it's like, I don't know. He's like a 1 goal a match tops kind of guy, right? So he was like that at Wolves too.
Yeah, I'm considering punting on Raul Jimenez because with the wild card imminent for me and Southampton, and Russell Martin just got sacked, and rightfully so. He's programmed all those players to play the dumbest possible brand of football for that club.
Uh-huh.
There was a bed sheet in the stands at Southampton today where it was somebody had written out RM. Get out of our club. And it was sort of like they wanted plausible deniability if HR came to them and said, you weren't talking about Russell Martin, were you? And he's like, oh, no, I was just talking about, the tea lady or something like that.
Right.
But I'm very curious how this then subsequently shakes out at Southampton, because it's going to take a while for any sort of new manager to make sense of how, just the degradation that has happened with these players over the last few months. So it could just still be a field day for clubs for the near future.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, how much could they really fix in a week, right? During the holidays and everything. So, so I guess that's really, there's one. Oh, yeah. So we talked about cheap defenders a little bit already. Let's do one final question here, Brandon, as we wrap things up. And Kendall asks, is it too late to sell Haaland? He said the fixtures the fixtures finally turned good in game week 18. So what do you think? If you have Haaland, are you holding
What are you waiting to see? Like it's sort of like the Mr. Policeman, I gave you all the clues sort of situation. I think
it feels
time.
Like I know. I mean, even the Everton match, it's like that is in theory a great match, but even that one, I feel like they're going to give him fits.
This happened last season with Haaland as well, toward the end of the season, where he went on a bit of a scoring drought, and I got caught in this trap, as I did earlier this season, of what a treat to own a player of this caliber for a differential.
Right.
And what you then realize is you're the idiot.
Well, it's just like he costs like 30 million, right? It's like he gobbles up all the money that you could use to bring in Bruno or Ahmad, right? I mean, Ahmad's cheap, obviously, but any number of players like Isak, right? Who were 2 or 3 million more than the other players that you could afford if you didn't get rid of Haaland, right? And so I think that he's still, and I think the Villa match away is tough. I thought Emi Martinez, despite losing that match, made one of the coolest saves I've ever seen. Have you seen a highlight of this save? I know you said you were out.
I watched the first half of that match.
Okay,
it
was in the second half. It was just a incredible, one of those claws the ball out, just as it's about to cross the line. Really incredible. Such a great keeper. And so I think I think that'll be a tough match. And I think Everton could be slightly tricky for them as well. It's so funny how they're relegation. They're at relegation risk, and yet they're not a team anyone really wants to play either, right? It's a strange kind of spot to be in. And then, let's see after that. Leicester away, but that is a pretty good fixture, obviously. Then West Ham. I don't know. Let's see how West Ham look.
The thing with Haaland is you're not going to captain him, and that's kind of
right. That's a good point.
Everyone's lost, even if you still have him. How close are you to ever captaining him?
Yeah, you're right.
That is the answer to your question.
Even Leicester away, you don't really want to do it, right? Because you just can't trust. Because the problem is it's not a Haaland problem exactly. It's a everybody else in the team problem, right? There's Foden is like no one knows what's going on with him. KDB, as we talked about earlier, is just kind of in the kind of natural decline, right? He's obviously been absolutely brilliant for a long time. Gundogan is kind of the same way, right? Even Bernardo Silva, there's this whole kind of class of amazing midfielders that have been the bedrock of this squad that are just not in peak form and have not been for half of a season now. And you just can't be a forward in the Haaland mold and not basically he still converts when he gets chances. It's just
not really. I guess he scored 2 goals from 8 xG when he went on this.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I guess I was thinking he's still I don't know. It's like give him the ball in space or something. But you're right. He's just like, it feels like he's barely.
Feels like he's not a bad player. I think is fair
of course
to say.
not. But I feel like that XG number inflates things a little bit because he has to work super hard, right? A lot of these are like, headers that he gets his head on where he's double marked, and it's just like it's really. I feel like he's fighting for every chance so hard, right? And maybe he needs to evolve at some point. I don't know. Like, that's not really my.
He just needs to go to Spain and love it.
Who knows? But he can't kind of do what Palmer or Saka do or other fantasy assets, right? Where they can sort of like create some space for himself outside the box. Yeah, exactly. So, so I would drop Haaland, and just if only because he's so expensive. I think that's really the biggest reason to do it. All right, well there we go, Brendan. I think it's a pretty straightforward weekend ahead. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think it's been a fun. It's been as we kind of head towards the end of the first half of the Premier League season. I will say fantasy has been interesting. The Premier League has been interesting, and let's hope the next 4 weeks are. I mean, we're gonna keep potting, but just as we ring in the holidays, Brandon, I am enjoying the FPL season so far.
Here. Yes. All right. Well, let's get out of here. A big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. If you like what you hear and you just want to say thanks for a great 2024 to the cheaters, or you want more fantasy and cheating content in return, go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. Lots of different levels of support where you get access to our Discord and a free ad-free and an extra ad-free podcast each week. Every week, we like to thank our highest Patreon level of support, the producers. Thanks to producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, Dave Wagner, Lodahl, our buddy Chris Howell, Andy Penn, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Brian Chin, Bobbas Kuhn, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, Terrence O'Donnell, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, as he does it, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Craig Jackson, Caleb Robbie, Brian Clark, Thomas Tislov, Fro Jacobson, Gareth H., Shalin F. Kadaki, Arishi Nigam, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Matthew Skinner, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Rune Sandberg, James Murray Wood, James C., James Holland. Merry Christmas, the three Jims. Imagine they showed up caroling at your front door, the three Jims.
Amazing. My neighborhood, they are doing caroling this Wednesday, Brendan. I don't plan to participate, but I like living at a place where people do caroling.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Bring the festive spirit. Also, producers Scully, Craig at Total Maths Tutoring. Maybe some of our listeners out there have a New Year's resolution to get better at math. Get in touch with Craig.
It's possible. Yeah.
And Francis Mann. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Follow on social media. We're on Blue Sky. So if you made that move to Blue Sky, check us out. Always Cheating FPL over there.
I think that's right. Yeah.
All right. And all that information, if you zoned out there, was at our website, alwayscheating.com.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays, and we will talk to you soon.